Well, welcome to Chapter 6, first video lecture. First thing I'm going to talk about are classes and objects. And basically, Chapter 6 gets into object-oriented programming. And basically what that means is we now have this blob of code that is now an object. Now the object is going to have some different properties that we're going to have to code. Number one, it's going to have fields. So it's going to have actual data, let's call them holders of data, places to store data, call them fields. And then we're going to have what are called methods. And we know what methods are. Methods are executable things. They actually execute code. Now, are we going to know? I mean, we're going to actually program the fields and the methods, so we're going to know what they are. But the great thing about object-oriented is we can actually create a class, an object, compile it, put it out there, and then folks can actually then use it just like we've seen in the previous chapters where you can actually code for. Here's an example I want to basically use. We've used a decimal format class. Now that is an object that we have used. So we created it by saying decimal format, the class name. Then we created a variable called $, and it's going to be instantiated as a new decimal format, and then we basically have these left and right parentheses. Now, every time we call an object, we will say the object name, the variable that we're going to set that to. That $, now becomes an object class, or basically it's an instantiated class from that, and I'm instantiated as new, so it's being brand spanking new. And inside these parentheses, depending on how the class is written, it's going to either have require data to be put into there or no data at all. So that's how we use a class. And then when I come down here, I can type in $. Now after that dot, I can actually, you know what? I'm in Notepad. I am not in, okay. So let me bring it in real quick. And let me open up sales. And so here's my $. So here it is up here was the decimal format $, new decimal format. So the decimal format is $. Now, when we create an object, we cannot use that object directly. What do I mean by that? Well, in this case, I cannot use decimal format directly. I have to instantiate it via another naming convention. In this case, we're calling it $, so it's a variable. So I cannot use that directly. Now we're going to create a class, and we can't use that class directly. We have to instantiate it through a variable name. So the point I was trying to make here is now $. What are all the different things that are available to me? Well, if I do a Control Shift, here they all are. There's format, 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 a double, a long, an object, get grouping, get max, get max. So there's all kinds of different variables that are available to us. Okay. Now we're going to write our own class, and we'll have those. And when somebody uses our class and they instantiate it as a new variable, and they type a period, they're going to see all of our methods that we have written. Okay, so how do we create a class? Well, not too bad. We basically, I'm going to basically say, I'm going to do a right click on my package. I'm going to say new class, and we'll call this Chap 6 demo. And I'm going to instantiate it. Well, I'm going to make sure it's a public static void main, so it's executable. And I click finish. So when I get done, here is my executable. Now this is not the class I'm talking about. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say I want to create a dog object. So I'm going to type in capital D-O-G and then a lowercase d-o-g, and that's perfectly legal, is equal to a new, come on computer, dog. I'm going to put a left and right parenthesis and then basically come down. Now the first thing you'll notice is we see red squiggly lines underneath that. That means we've got an error. And the reason we have an error is it goes, I don't know what a dog is. You have to create a dog class object for me to instantiate from. So I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to come over here and do a right click. I'm going to say new class. I'm going to call this a dog. Now notice I'm not going to click the public main. We don't need that now. This is a object. So I click finish. So here I am. I now have a dog class. Now the very first thing I need to do is I need to create fields. So what does a dog do? Well, what fields could it have? Well, it could have a string. I'm going to call it private, and we'll talk about that in just a sec. Private string name. We'll call it private string sound. Private string what things could a dog do? Well, it could we'll call it action. Okay, so now I've created fields. Now if you look, I've got a private in front of each one of those. Now what that says is only this class can see those fields. Gosh, how do we get access to those fields then? Well, we have to code for that. So what we'll do is this. I will say oh, well, let me show you the shortcut. If we come up here to source on our menu bar in Eclipse and click, down here I've got this thing called generate getters and setters. What the heck are those? Well, let's click on it and it's going to come up and says, hey, I see you've got 3 fields. I can go ahead and create getters and setters for each of those fields. So I put check marks on all of them and I go ahead and click OK. Default was public, so now these are public. So what we just created were a bunch of methods. So here's what those methods do. I created a private string, a private string, a private string. Only this class can see those fields. Okay, so how do we, as another class, instantiating this class, how do I get access to them? I get access to them through my getters and setters, just what they say. So I say public void. Remember what void is in a method that says I'm not returning anything, and it's called set name. Inside of set name I have string name. Okay, wow. So this is expecting a string and it's called name, and then it's got this dot name equals name. Wow, that seems weird. This dot name equals name. So what this is saying is this. This represents this class, the dog class. And dot name means I'm referring to this name up here at the top. Okay. This name over here is referring to the name that's being passed to it. Okay. So I'm passing in a name. I'm going to make this name equal to that. So it's a set. I am setting that field to something. Okay. And I've got set sound and set action. They all do the same thing. So I've got my object. It's got 3 fields. I can set each one of those fields to something. I pass in a piece of data. In this case, it's looking for string. Does it have to be a string? No, it can be any data type. It could, a boolean, a double, an int, whatever the case may be. I pass that in and I set that item up. Okay. Now I've got public string get sound. So now string, it says that's what I'm passing back. I'm going to returning something. In this case it says return sound. Notice there's no parameters inside the parentheses, so there's nothing that needs to be passed into this method. And it's returning sound. So whatever it got set to sound up here through the setter, so through set sound, I can now say get sound. So on the outside of this class, once I instantiate this class, I can set the field to something, and then I can get that field through a getter and a setter. Now here's what I want you to think about. Once I instantiate this dog object and I put something in the name, I put something in the sound, and I put something in the action, then that object has that data in there, and anytime I need that. So here's what I want you to think about. We've got a dog class, but I could create an employee class. An employee could have a name, an address, city, state, zip. It could have pay rate. It could have hours worked, and everything. And I will create an object for each employee. Okay, now that'll make a little more sense as we start getting into multiple objects here. So here I've got my dog class. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And now when I go back to my Chapter 6 demo code, if my computer will cooperate with me, oh, went too far. Notice dog is no longer red squiggly line. That means we can use it now. So now when I come down a line and I've got my lowercase dog, I type in dog dot. Notice I've got a whole lot, so we've got a lot of defaults built in, but notice I've got get name, get sound, get action, and I've got set name, set sound, and set action. So I'm going to click on set name, and I'm going to type in double quote spot double quote. So I've just given my dog the name of Spot. Then I can say dog dot set sound to double quote bark double quote, and then I will do the same for dog dot set action, and I will say this dog is going to dig. Okay, so I've just set those 3 fields inside of my dog class. Now I'm going to say sysout. Now syso, if I type in syso and then hit control space, it will basically do it for me, a print line. I'm going to say dog dot get name, and I will do the same thing for the other 2. Okay. So I've got those 3 in there, and now I'm going to go ahead and run this guy. So I'll run my Chapter 6 demo. And when it runs, we'll see spot, bark, and dig. So I set the field. Now that field's private. I can't use that field directly, but I can use the setter to set that to something. And when I need to get the information from that field, I use a getter to get that information. And there's setters, getters, and classes. Okay, so that's kind of a quick overview of what Chapter 6 is going to be about. We're going to go ahead and stop right here, and we'll continue on with the next video lecture.